Welcome back to Star Wars Minute. It's the daily podcast where we analyze, scrutinize, and celebrate the Star Wars movies 1 minute at a time. I'm Pete the Retailer from PeteTheRetailer.com.
I'm Alex Robinson from AlexRobinson.fun.
And I'm Todd Alcott from Todd Alcott Graphics, which you can find at Etsy.
There you go. And I recommend you finding them on them, you and them. You and your items, your products.
It's all there.
Yes. It's good stuff. Recommended to be checked out. And welcome back, Todd.
Oh, thank you.
To have you here. We are today. We are talking about minute 28 of Star Wars Episode 9, The Rise of Skywalker. 28 starts with Lando asking Rey to do him a favor.
Right.
And it ends with the stormtroopers flying now. So let's start with the favor.
Right.
Because it could go, I feel like we are bringing, or at least me, let me speak for myself, that I know what's trying to be conveyed here. And having read this part of the novelization, they kind of add a little bit of Rey is feeling that she was missing out on having said goodbye to Leia kind of when they left, and she wanted Lando to be like, no, like you go talk to her because you don't want to miss out on talking to her. And Lando, like they explain, obviously you can get inside their heads and explain a little more about what they're feeling if you're writing it in a book versus what they're expressing here.
Right.
And I feel like watching it here, it's our own, let me rephrase that to be my own baggage. What I'm bringing with me is we've come to see Lando as kind of, the smooth kind of, he's a player.
Mm-hmm.
And a playa, rather.
Right.
And when the way that he says things, we can't help but kind of add a little inflection of that. So when he's like, do me a favor, give Leia my love. I'm like, I feel a little creeped out by that he's asking Rey this. And then Rey's response, which we know that she's really meant to do that more. She's responding is like, I miss Leia too. You should really tell her yourself because it's, but she's like, you should tell her that yourself. Like, it seems like she's a little creeped out. It's like, you should do that. You should take care of that yourself.
Yeah, I'm not
don't
involve
me in this. Thank you.
I
just met you 5 minutes ago.
It's funny. I would have let that go, except that, of course, later in the movie, Lando does exactly the same line reading to the woman he just met. Met. Well, why don't we find out?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Who may or may not be his daughter. And it's a weird... it's and again, I think it's just, that's his tone. That's his, and we're bringing that because we are so enthralled by his sexiness.
You just can't help himself.
That's his title. That's his title, his sexiness.
I mean, it's true that Billy D. Williams was a sex symbol in the 70s, but we have, but just speaking in terms of who Lando is, we as a viewer that's all we've seen him do. Like, he does the same thing the first time he meets Leia.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's like, oh, it's not the princess of the exploded planet of Alderaan and an important key player in the rebellion. It's, well, hello, Leia. So it's not unfair to read that in because that's the history that they've brought to it.
That's true.
Anyway,
yeah,
from the get-go.
There in the text.
What do we think? And speculation. What do we think their relationship has been like over the years between Return of the Jedi and now?
Lando and Leia's relationship.
Lando and Leia's relationship, because then like Han, Lando is still active in the rebellion. Han goes off to be a smuggler again. Like they still talk. Like, do you think like? Did he come back and try to like, hey, now that Han is out of the game, how we doing? Like, or was it purely, there's always respect there, obviously.
Sure.
But is there another level to it? Hard to tell.
Well, it's funny because, do they ever explain in this movie why he's on this other desert planet where the kite festival's going on?
I don't think they explain anything in this movie, which is part of why I like it.
Okay.
Him and Luke were on an adventure, and they were looking for the person who had a clue that would lead them to where the Wayfinder is, the MacGuffin that they're trying to track down. And I guess he just stayed after he liked it so much. The humidity, the dry climate was good for his breathing.
So he was with Luke, and is this like the journey that broke Luke's heart and made him go live in Ireland, or I don't know.
It is too different. He was like, it's too hot and dry there for me. I got to go to someplace cold and wet.
Yeah.
And Lando was like, this is a perfect climate for me.
Well, that's the other thing is, what does Lando think he's doing there? Is he waiting for someone to come try to find dead guy's ship?
Yeah. I don't know.
I mean, I'm assuming, I could be right. Well, I think he does say something about. Hang on a second. I have to consult the novelization because I did just read this not too long ago.
Sure.
And they basically said he was hanging out there waiting for something to happen.
He was waiting for Rey and the gang to show up so he could do his cameo.
Right. Yeah, that must be it.
But
I'll see you in the third act.
But he's driving. He's driving this desert planet space van with all of the stuff hanging in it.
He's not driving. The Colone is driving. The amazing puppet. Colone the amazing puppet is driving. But yes, but he's
that's his ride.
That's his ride.
The last time we saw him, when we met him, he was running a planet.
Right.
He was the smooth talking gambler, ne'er-do-well scallywag who had won a planet in a poker game.
Right.
And now he's content to ride around in the desert space van, with his cargo of dream catchers that he sells at the local festival.
Well, this festival seems like he would do well. He would clean up if he was selling dream catchers. It seems very much like, these guys are all dancing around in the desert with brightly colored smoke. And
well, that's true. I hadn't thought about a Burning Man sort of connection, but I find it hard to believe that Lando would be satisfied with the life on this desert planet. Like, what is he doing during non-festival times?
Well, good thing I came back to this because I had kind of missed this, I guess, the first time I went through it. So in the novelization, they say that he's got a clue. Came here looking for Ochi, who had a clue who could lead them to the right.
He had the dagger.
Well, he didn't. They don't know about the dagger. They just think that he could have a clue that could lead them to the. Lando says they chased Ochi halfway across the galaxy. Finn says, here to Pisana. Lando says, this is where the trail went cold. Ochi disappeared into the desert. Luke sensed that he was still here. We found his ship abandoned, but no Ochi, no clue, no Wayfinder. But something about the way he said it. Rey asks, so you stayed here? Lando says, here and there. The desert helps you forget. And then sadness tinged his voice. The cabin jerked as the treadable lurched over a boulder. C-3PO grabbed a hanging net to steady himself. And Lando went on. The First Order went after us, the leaders from the old wars. They took our kids. His gaze grew distant. My girl wasn't even old enough to walk. As far as I know, she's a stormtrooper now. And Finn's face turned grim, and then they have a moment, and then Lando says, they turned our kids into our enemies. My girl, Han and Leia's son Ben, to kill the spirit of the rebellion for good.
Okay. Well, that explains a whole lot because it's almost the last line of the movie where Lando meets this woman. She doesn't say, I'm from this planet. I was there as a stormtrooper and we stole a ship and fled and all of that stuff. Right. And I'm guessing that the earlier line was cut. As far as I know, my daughter could be a stormtrooper. That's all we would need.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And then it wouldn't be quite so creepy to end the movie on that, well, honey.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I was just thinking earlier today that the problem with movies is that they reduce literature to anecdote. And there's a perfect example. Here's this rich text, and they've anyway.
Yeah, it was an odd choice to leave that last bit in when they took the other supporting parts out.
Yeah.
But I guess they wanted to just not have a loose hang, like, well, we have to have something about why this character's here, even though they didn't. She was a fine, they have a lot of other characters that they didn't explain anything about that are also here.
And especially when it seemed like she was being promoted as Finn's new girlfriend.
Kind of, yeah. You think that's a promotion? I mean, I love Finn, but he got kind of demoted in this one too. I don't know if that's a upward trajectory there.
Not as bad as Rose.
Yeah,
Rose loses lines to one of the hobbits from the Lord of the Rings.
Yeah,
it's like, that guy from Lost, he didn't have to say that line. Rose is standing right next to him, and we spent a whole movie with her. Anyway.
Yeah. I guess that's like, hey, Rose, you want to come on this adventure? She's like, no, thanks. I'm going to stay here.
I guess framing it positively, this movie, it doesn't go too deep, but it has a lot of breadth. Like, it introduces a lot of characters. Mm-hmm. We don't know much about a lot of them. We don't know much about Kerry Russell's character later on. I always forget that that's even a part of the movie, that Kerry Russell is in this movie, and that's a whole scene and stuff. So it's you could definitely do another version of this movie that cuts out a lot of the subplots and kind of more fleshes out the Lando and his kid, or that kind of stuff. So, but choice.
I think it does a good job of then wrapping up the storyline as we know it, ties up some loose ends while sowing a bunch of seeds. Sowing a bunch of seeds. I was like, reaping? No, wait, which is? But like, it throws out all these things. So like, wait a minute, I didn't know anything about that. Like, so it's leaving doors open for people to come in and expand this universe, if I could borrow a phrase.
Right.
Yeah, the next 25 years of Star Wars TV shows will be setting up Lando's kid, and you know what I mean? Like,
right.
It'll be up to the other media to fill in those gaps and stuff. So
right.
So Lando's kid was taken by the First Order. So I'm assuming this happened like 25 years ago, or because she looks like she's in her 20s. She doesn't look like she's especially.
Sure. Let's say 20 years ago, because it says when she was barely old enough to walk. So let's say 20 years ago.
Okay. But then when the First Order is attacking, everyone's like, "No, they're not. They're not." Like, it seems like if the First Order was already kidnapping children 20 years ago, that they would be kind of like, okay, we better get ready for this First Order because they're going to come attack us. But when they come, the Republic's like, no, we don't want to, we think this thread is made up or whatever. So anyway, I just think that's a weird, it creates its own problems by making it so that I can see him being like, I don't know what happened to my kid. She was disappeared. But the fact that he specifically knows she was taken by the First Order implies that a lot more people know about the First Order than I got the impression of. But
they were targeting them in the rebellion first, and the rebellion, remember, is not on even terms with the government, with the New Republic.
But why was there even a rebellion 20 years ago?
It was the Resistance, which is the offshoot of the rebellion.
Right. What were they resisting against at that time?
Complacency. they were
government waste.
As you've seen. Yeah, I mean, basically, they're as and this has been kind of what a lot of the the TV shows and stuff have been throwing kind of logs on this fire, that the path from the New Republic to the end of to Hosnian, destruction of Hosnian Prime and the Resistance and the First Order and all that is basically like, the New Republic came in and it's like, meet the new boss same as the old boss. They didn't change enough.
Right.
They just kind of like took over, and they were like, sure, more benevolent at heart, but like so many things weren't that different.
Sure.
And Leia and the Resistance were a great band. No, Leia and the Resistance were a kind of a force to be like, no, wait, we really need to change everything. and I feel like they felt like not enough was being done, and so they kind of kept pushing.
Mm-hmm.
Right. No, I definitely get that from the show with I'm forgetting now, but they had a whole episode that wasn't about the main character, but instead was about this guy living on Coruscant who used to be in the Empire, and anyway. So yeah, I got that idea that so the New Republic is here, but they're not. It's like, who do you hire to fill all your government positions? Well, who was there? People who know how to do that stuff. People who were already there. So I feel like by this movie, the Resistance is almost like the Bernie Bros, where it's like they're so far out to the left that they know that the New Republic won't do enough to stop this First Order, because they're the establishment now, and they need to be further left than that. It's funny though, because as young as Lando's daughter is, when she gets taken away, I have to ask now, whose kid is Admiral Hux? He must have been 5 when the First Order First Order, yeah.
Right.
Well, Hux is not his backstory is well established. He's the son of a Imperial muckety muck, so he was kind of groomed to be Imperial from the start.
Right.
As it should be obvious. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh no, it's yeah.
To the bone.
Mm-hmm.
And also, I mean, he makes such a great figure of that kind of far right sensibility of we won't let this multiculturalism take over our once great civilization.
Right.
But in any case,
well, I really like the concept of basically, and that seems like almost a more interesting story. If the New Republic government was like purposely, the same way some people maybe in our government would be like, we'd be fine with someone kind of coming in and overtaking this whole operation. The fact that if the government was actually basically conspiring, or at least collaborating with the First Order or elements, but I guess we don't really know much other than the opening crawl. We don't really know much about what the situation is like. So there's room there for some stuff.
Well, exactly. my first question while watching that long ago movie, The Force Awakens, was how long has this First Order been around that they have turned a planet into a weapon? Like that took a long time to figure out, or it should have in any case. One of the things that I often think about while watching Star Wars material is, here in human world, it was 65 years between Kitty Hawk and the Apollo 11 flight. Mm-hmm. Like that's what we were able to accomplish in that much time. The Star Wars world has been around for almost 50 years now. I mean, in canon, right? It's been around for that long. And so much of the technology seems exactly the same. Now I see now that you can make Star Destroyers out of nothing on Exegol, and each one can have a Death Star laser, and that makes sense that as technology progresses, it becomes smaller and more efficient. And I have a ton of questions about who the people are on Exegol and how they got there and what they eat and where they live and what they sleep in and all of that sort of thing. But that falls outside the minute that we've been assigned here.
Keep telling yourself it's just a show and you should really just relax.
Well, there's that, but it's funny. No, I'm kidding. Well, just outside of this minute is the flying stormtrooper,
right?
And somebody said,
we see when get launched. He's we don't know that he's actively flying. He's airborne at the end of this minute. We'll see what happens to him.
Well, but somebody says, well, they fly now, and then someone else says they fly now, and then they say they fly now, and I feel like they're, it's a few minutes later they're in the snake's den, and she can now heal snakes, and there's no explanation for that either. She thinks real hard, and now she can heal snakes.
She can only heal snakes. It's a very narrow power. She can only heal snakes.
Yeah, it's funny. Well, I mean, Kylo Ren in his own way is a snake, but
there you go. From a certain point of view.
I half expected the snake, as it goes coiling out of its little burrow there, to say, "Oh, and I've got another one back here. Could you?"
Right, some sciatica.
And also, what does the snake think is going to happen when it shows up?
We haven't gotten there yet, so we cannot address the snake issue.
No, it's all. Well, the first thing that I noted while watching the Lando and Leia scene, the back half of it, and all the stuff that follows. I mean, the whatever else these movies are, they're incredibly well done. All of the special effects look great. I expect they're still going to look great in a decade. But it reminded me something that I ask myself a lot while watching the various shows was, what makes Star Wars Star Wars? And there is a really specific ideas about design that from the very first shot of the original movie, where you see the Tantive 4 going into the distance and then the gigantic ship going overhead. I mean, I was 16 years old, and when our screening ended, my friends and I, we didn't say anything. We didn't even look at each other. We just sat there because we knew we were going to stay and watch it again. There wasn't any discussion about it. And it was that shot that made you go, wait a minute, what is this? What is this? Because it was both very new and felt very old at the same time, and it was the first time you had seen that kind of worn science fiction,
lived in,
so that everything was dirty and everything was lived in and everything was broken, and people's houses had piles of garbage sitting around, and that tradition certainly continues into this movie. My only question is when it's hip and funny in a I don't know, seems like a very 21st century way. Like, for instance, soon in the snake's den, there's a scene where Rey turns on her lightsaber to light the way, and then Poe turns on his flashlight as though it's also a lightsaber, and he looks at his flashlight beam and he looks at her lightsaber. He doesn't look to camera, but he almost looks to camera. And the idea of the characters in a Star Wars movie commenting on the fact that they're in a Star Wars movie, always felt weird to me. And it's a habit that this movie has here and there. I wouldn't say it's a, geez, I don't know. I'm curious. You've done at least 25 of these for this movie. What is the consensus? What are people saying?
No consensus of yet.
Really?
Like, going back a little bit, yeah. It's even amongst us, I like this movie a lot more than Alex does. and it's a different kind of. I can see it as absolutely a different vibe, but it's kind of, Star Wars as told through a modern movie language.
Okay.
And
I feel like that's been an issue since Force Awakens. Basically, the whole Disney era is that same kind of MCU sort of feel to it, that kind of like wisecracking, kind of ironic, take on it.
Right.
Well, it's funny because the mood and tone of the 70s trilogy was that it was paying tribute to movies from the 30s and 40s, but it was taking it all very, very seriously. Like, as silly as the dialogue was, and as silly as the whole kind of space wizard thing goes, to the kids in the audience, at least, and I was certainly one of them, it's like, this is a fantasy, and you should take it very seriously. It's very important. And the kind of tone of it's just silly. You don't have to take it too seriously. We're all having fun up here. And I love that. I just the new Dungeons and Dragons movie, which I had no interest in seeing, and I read the reviews, and my son mentioned how great it was, and I was like, well, okay, I'll go see it. I loved it. That it really does feel like there's these improv kids having their best day of improv class ever. And it's like, it's so well produced, and everybody's chemistry is so wonderful. And there's a lot of that going on in this movie because the actors are all incredibly talented. And it's not fun to see that. It just, it feels like a very different tone to me. Especially when it is concerned about repeating so many of the beats from the original trilogy and calling back to them. It's like, well, if you're going to call back to that and also make fun of it, or also comment on it, also make it like, oh, that weren't things lame back then, things are cool now. I mean, there's no reason why there wouldn't be a generational shift in the people of the world. There's no reason why that wouldn't have happened. It's just interesting. It's something I spend too much time thinking about, obviously.
No, that's why we're here.
Yeah.
That kind of meshes with my, I think outside of the original trilogy, I think the goofier and less serious it takes itself, the more I like it. Okay. But with the original trilogy, I get very because I don't like it when it my favorite prequel is The Phantom Menace because it's just like goofy weirdness and not bogged down by its own lore and stuff like that. And
except for the whole first act about the Trade Federation's embargo of
right.
I mean I was stunned that the first Star Wars movie in 23 years opened with this dense block of political analysis that had no idea what was going on. My son, Phantom Menace for a long time was his favorite movie, and he learned it all. I wish he was here with me to talk about this because he knows this stuff inside and out. And so he's like, well, you see, what you have to understand is that this federation from this world had this treaty with. Okay. And it's all very real to him. And I wonder to whom is this movie real? Obviously it was hugely successful. There isn't any sense of, well, people just aren't aware of this movie because they weren't interested. But I don't know.
Well, so Todd, I have a question for you. You at one point were a screenwriter. You wrote screenplays and so on.
Yes, I wrote screenplays.
And I remember you had done, I remember you used to do analysis of movies based on specifically the screenplay and the structure and all that stuff. Yeah. Did you, by any chance, read the Lost Trevorrow script that was going around that was supposedly what the original version of this movie was going to be?
No, I haven't. Okay. How is it different?
I've never read it myself, but I was just curious. Of course, there's a certain section of fandom that was like, oh, this would have been the greatest movie ever. They totally should have done this movie. And I'm sure they would have been complaining about it if that movie had actually come out. But
there are people who are going to complain either way.
Yeah. So anyway, I guess you haven't seen it, so
I should mention that not only am I also a screenwriter. I've been saying that I'm no longer a screenwriter, but the fact is, one of my screenplays has come back from the dead, and I'm not talking about it because who knows. But
somehow your screenplay has returned.
Somehow my screenplay has returned. Exactly. Who's building those ships? I don't know.
Cultists.
Cultists built the ships, the enormous fleet of ships, with their minds? Is that what's going on?
I don't know. I think they were just building them for, they've been working on this for, it's a grand plan. It's all part of Sheev's plan.
Right. And are there massive factories off screen that we don't see?
We have to assume.
Could be. They rise up out of the ground.
They're under ice.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Maybe they built them underwater, under ice to kind of simulate the vacuum of space, just to make sure, like, all right, any leaks? No? Okay. Oh, they could also be, maybe they're flat pack, like IKEA. They're just like, they ordered a bunch of, over the years, they keep just ordering new ones, and they don't have to be built from scratch. They just have to kind of be assembled, and a bunch of cultists with Allen wrenches just tightening everything up and making it.
Right. But the planet is inaccessible and unknown, so the stuff wouldn't be delivered there.
They have to give P.O. box or something. They have to go pick it up all the time.
True. They do have light speed travel, so I guess that's okay. But but then later on, the fleet is assembled, and now it's staffed. Now everything's completely manned.
Yeah.
I don't know. There's part of me that with this movie, I feel like, and I should add what I was going to say before. I've worked not with J.J. Abrams directly, because he's an important man. He's got many people that he works with, but his company, Bad Robot, was very enthusiastic about a script of mine, and they have all been very, very nice to me. So. I have no complaint against J.J. Abrams and all of the wonderful things he does. And also, I realized watching the credits to this morning was Rick Carter is one of the designers on the show, and I worked with him on a project as well. Fantastic production designer, and that's what I was getting at earlier. The fact that design is so important to whether something feels like Star Wars or not.
Totally.
And as long as it's in the right environment and it has the right kind of, and it makes sense that like every place in this universe is filthy and covered in dust, except for Kylo Ren's living quarters, where he keeps his Darth Vader mask on its special Darth Vader mask plinth. It's spotless. You get the feeling that it's brand new. This stuff really did just get assembled that morning, and it
still has that new Death Star smell.
Yeah, and I also noticed this afternoon that Rey slices off the wing of his TIE Interceptor as he comes zooming in to get her in the desert in a few minutes, and then a half hour later he's got a brand new one. And I feel like that must, they must have a whole bunch of them sitting aside for him. Yeah, it's great. It's a great thing for him to have. He gets unlimited.
I think one of his force powers is heal, is repair. Well, he is a Skywalker also, don't forget. And Anakin and Luke both famous for being good tinkerers. So
sure.
Right.
Yeah.
Although I'm picturing if he's working for the First Order and they have all kinds of resources, he probably has like a TIE fighter caddy. So he's like, "What are you doing?" "I'm going out to I'm going to go attack Rey on Pasana." It's like, Pasana, better take an interceptor. Like he's got kind of recommending the right TIE fighter for the job, and then as soon as it gets sliced up, he comes out with another one.
Yeah.
Well, I was thinking more like Bryan Cranston in Drive. He's the guy who builds Ryan Ryan Gosling. Ryan Gosling, is that his name?
Sounds right.
He builds his getaway cars for him.
Right.
I like that idea. I wish we had met that guy. And I also love Kylo's lightsaber with the exposed wires on the outside, where it's like, yeah, he put that together, and that's why. And the blade came out all red and wiggly, and he was like, "Oh, I like that. That's cool. I'm going to keep."
Yeah. One of the benefits of being on the dark side is that nobody's gonna, but nobody's really gonna reprimand you for doing stuff not right. Yeah. There's no Yoda to be like, no, try harder. He's like, no, I just did it this way and works for me. So
yeah, he's the boss.
And of course, that all goes back to George Lucas being that guy. He was a tinkerer and a lot of people forget that his primary job in the early days was taking film equipment, taking it apart, building it into something else, and loved all that technical stuff. And it makes sense that the special effects in the original trilogy, certainly we can identify them today and go, oh well, look, that's a drop, and that's a matte shot, that's a traveling mat, that's a puppet, so forth and so on. But oh my God, I was just watching the sword fight on the wreck of the Death Star, and I'm like, I totally buy that they are on that piece of metal in that enormous ocean and doing that sword fight. It never occurred to me for a second that, geez, how do you put that shot together? That's amazing. Yeah. So all along the way, the movies have always been this kind of marriage of incredible special effects and these warm human moments and all of that sort of thing. But in any case, there was a part of this that you remember the last season of Game of Thrones?
Never saw it.
Gave up about halfway through.
Okay. Yeah. So in the last season of Game of Thrones, that's okay. The up to the final season, it was a big deal whenever you had to go somewhere. It's like, oh, I'm going from here to this place next to the wall. Oh my God. Well, it's a perilous journey. It's going to take you months. You better take this and this and this. And then they have all kinds of horrible things that happen to them on the way there. And by the final season, people were just zipping all over the world. They'd be in one place one day and then another place the next day. And I feel like this movie sacrifices depth by in favor of coolness. It's like, oh, you know what would be cool if this happened, and then the ship lands and the thing drops down and horses come out. and now the stormtroopers, they don't have speeders, they have these super speed tank treads that they zip around on in desert climates, and they come with a launcher that launches guys off. And I feel like, at the end of, you mentioned that Disney was trying to replicate the Marvel thing. At the end of Infinity War, everybody dies. And the audience is just given this enormous punch in the gut. And it takes 3 hours for the universe to set that right, and we've got to go through that process and see, well, Thor goes to this place and gets his hammer made and so forth. I feel like that I keep thinking back to Empire Strikes Back and how the entire first act is Darth Vader now knows where Luke is, and the rebellion has to get off Hoth. That's the whole first half hour of the movie. How do they get off Hoth? What is the battle like? What goes through the minds of the people in it? So forth and so on. How do they take down that AT-AT thing? I don't know how long that sequence is, but that battle sequence, which thrilled me as an 18-year-old, that wouldn't count for a minute of screen time in one of the modern ones. That would be that you'd get rid of that in a heartbeat. And while so much stuff happens in this movie, it's like it doesn't grab me the way that the earlier movies. And I don't know, Pete, you were saying that the original trilogy, it takes itself too seriously.
original flavor, original recipe Star Wars, the motion picture is always going to be my favorite thing of all time. And then outside of that, once you get past that envelope, then I feel like anything is trying to be Star Wars that's outside of the trilogy, the goofier the better. But within that, I'm totally on board with, Star Wars and Empire being as serious as they need to be, because it is. They're taking it. I mean, that's the kind of the point. Conceit. There was no Star Wars for it to react against, in a sense. So it was setting itself. It was a reaction in and of itself to what was going on Hollywood-wise at the time, and then also kind of like established this whole, none of us would be here if we didn't take it seriously.
Well, it's especially funny since George Lucas was at the very heart of the new Hollywood movement.
Yeah.
And American Graffiti is such a perfect example of a new Hollywood movie. With the emphasis on performance and texture and all of that sort of thing, and it was. I mean, I'm probably one of the few people my age in the world who, I wanted to see Star Wars because it was the new movie by the guy who did American Graffiti. I don't know if anybody else was like that, but for me, American Graffiti, it was the first screenplay I ever read, because I saw the paperback in my local bookstore, and I picked it up and I memorized the script long before the movie came out. And I remember watching the movie and going but there was so much more in the script. This is it's going by too fast. You've got to dwell on these things. And of course, I'm wrong about that. That was a 12-year-old me not knowing how movies get made. But yeah, that's the movie that changed everything. And it's funny that it was so backward looking, but to a generation of teenagers, there wasn't any past to look back on. It was all brand new. And the fact that the title sequence was a reference to the Flash Gordon serials. That was something that maybe somewhere in the dim recesses of my species memory, I kind of know that. But it was just that music and the crawl, and you'd never seen anything like it before. Certainly not on a 40-foot screen, and it was just it's still that's you go to any Star Wars movie, and that music starts, and people just it's intoxicating. It's the best thing in the world. It goosebumps. And people cheer. Anyway. I like Star Wars.
Me too.
Well, speaking of things we like, my last note is this is the start. C-3PO trailing behind everyone shows up and he says, "Oh, don't worry, I made it." And it's the first of a great string of gags that C-3PO is not respected by anyone, and he keeps
and it's
trying
funny
to fight
that. And then they take him away from us later on.
Yeah,
so
for
they say
15 minutes.
Well, and that's the other thing is this movie. It keeps saying, "Oh no, this terrible thing happened." No, it didn't. It's okay. It's okay.
Really. Yeah.
and especially in regards to the whole last movie.
Yeah.
Remember that movie? Yeah, we're not doing it. Do you know from your novelizations and so forth, Pete, what the deal is with? Oh God, I forgot what I was going to say now.
The Sith chimp.
These people?
Chimp? We were talking about C-3PO and the stakes.
Stakes.
Yeah, I'm sorry, it's gone. I'm sure I'll get it.
All right.
But yes,
Well,
C-3PO is gone, and then he's back, and that's that. It's like, I mean, you know what I'm getting at is that so many things are too easy. You're in the den with the snake, and oh my God, there's a giant snake. It could eat all of us right now. That's the other thing that I always ask on these desert planets where nothing lives. How are these gigantic predators staying alive for all this time? the Sarlacc.
How many things fall through these sand pits?
Yeah, the Sarlacc has nothing to do for thousands of years besides eat whatever drops into it. But oh my God, it's a snake, and we're fine. No, she just had to do this thing. How she knew how to do that thing, I don't know. It's there's
There's a long tradition now ever since The Empire Strikes Back. Each is like, well, the force creep, and so we got to get. Well, we'll just add another force power that we didn't really talk about. But yeah, people who use the force can do this now. Oh, and they can do this now. And they can do this now. Like it's
It's just funny that comes right after they can fly now.
Right.
Yeah. And it goes back to an earlier point that I was thinking about the technology. Okay, so they've got planet destroying lasers on regular Star Destroyers now. What can you do with the Force now? Is that a thing? I mean, does that happen? I guess it would if we're in like a new age of miracles now. And Rey is its. I mean, I'm curious to see what they'll do with Rey. I hear she's going to be the star of a new trilogy.
Mm-hmm. We'll see, at least.
Yeah.
We think.
Yeah. Okay. Alrighty.
Yeah, it's interesting that you said like bringing that comparison, like the arms race between the Force and the Death Star lasers. Because in Force Awakens, we did see Kylo Ren kind of like absentmindedly stopping a blaster bolt in midair. So will we get to the point where we see somebody stopping a Death Star with the Force?
Wow.
Like stopping a Death Star blast with the Force.
Well, we see in just a few minutes that Rey can stop a ship as it's taking off. Not a big ship.
This is going crazy. It's all over the place. So I think before too long, we'll see somebody just use their Force to stop a Death Star blast, Death Star beam from destroying a planet.
Eventually we'll get to the point where someone is using, mark my words today, that someday we will see someone summoning laser bolts with the Force. You know what I mean? Like conjuring, shooting lightning, shooting lasers out of their hands.
Well, lightning is already happening. Yeah.
I know, but good guys doing it.
I can't remember who said this when this movie first came out, but it was like the Emperor has lightning shooting out of his fingers. Nothing can stop that. Aha! But I have 2 lightsabers. Oh no, not 2 lightsabers!
You win this time.
Exactly. Hadn't thought of that.
At first I thought, it's because the 2 of them are there, but as far as he knows, the 2 of them aren't there, and he thinks he's gotten rid of Kylo. Anyway, I mean, with any fantasy thing, you can pick it apart all day long, but you mentioned the Force creep, and I keep thinking about Superman and how the radio show and then the TV show and then the movie and then the next movie and all of that, you started to get this superpower creep with him as well. He has to be able to do everything. And
it's the third one where he's a superpower creep, right?
It used to be that he could leap tall buildings in a single bound. That's as late as the 40s. I think it comes from the radio show or the Fleischer cartoons. I can't remember, but suddenly he can fly, and he's not jumping anymore. He's flying. It doesn't make any sense. But he can fly now, and they say, well, it's because of his molecular density, because he's from another planet. Okay, why do lasers shoot out of his eyes? What could that, how could someone from another planet on this planet suddenly have the power to shoot lasers out of his eyes, where they didn't on his home planet?
Yeah. Right. I think a wizard did that, right?
A wizard did it. That's right.
Well, that's all I have for minute 28.
Yeah, pretty much we covered the things that actually happen here, I think, unless Todd, you had any...
No, I'm there's so much design in this movie. It's staggering. And in this minute as well, the interior of the space van, and then the next thing, it's a little scene on the outskirts of the desert celebration, and there's all of the weird robots and animals and things, and it's all just it's all so impressive. And you know, I watch like the prequel trilogy, and I can look at the scenes and go, okay, that's a real actor. That wasn't a set. They were sitting on a green thing. None of this is here. The actors weren't even on set at the same time, so forth and so on. I don't see any of that here. They go running through that little thing, and I did have one question. Poe hotwires the car. And there's this weird shot where Finn says, how do you know how to do that?
He's very judgy looking.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Finn is basically, he was a cop like 2 years ago.
He was a Nazi 2 years ago.
Yeah, that's what I mean. He was basically a space cop, space Nazi, whatever. He was, a fascist 2 years ago, and now he's like, wait a minute. Like, he's on board with the idea, but now he sees his friend like actually like stealing a car. He's like, how do you know how to do that? Like,
he's okay being part of a terrorist cell, but stealing cars, come on. That's
is that a lead into the whole "I was a spice runner" joke?
Yeah,
later on, yeah. Once he does more things that Finn has to question.
Yeah,
but his own ex-general, Han Solo, was also a spice runner.
Right.
Yeah. It was a popular occupation.
Right. but that whole I mean, it's a very funny exchange of, you were a spice runner? What? You were a stormtrooper? What? You were a scavenger? We could do this all day. I mean, Oscar Isaac's a national treasure, even though he's not an American. But
international treasure.
Yeah, he's a global treasure.
Global treasure.
Anyway, it's always. I mean, like I say, you could examine this from so many different angles. It was just that was a line that stuck out with Finn saying, "How do you know? It's like he's the best pilot in the galaxy. Why would he not know how to do that?"
Yeah.
Well, I mean, like, could Chuck Yeager hotwire a car? that's the question that we are all, we're all
tonight
here to ask.
On Star Wars Minute. Can Chuck Yeager hotwire a car?
As played by Sam Shepard in the movie? Yeah, sure.
Probably, right?
Sure. Yeah.
I think so. All right.
Yeah. Anyway.
I'll allow it. Well, Todd, thanks so much for coming and talking to us today.
It's all over too quickly. Thank you.
Always a pleasure
to
speak to you. And like I said, check out Todd Alcott Graphics. And hey, if you like what we're doing, we've talked about the social media from time to time, but we've been posting more this season to TikTok. If we haven't run out of steam by now, we've been posting stuff to TikTok pretty regularly. And so go check us out there. We're the Star Wars Minute on TikTok. And we post a little clip of stuff from each day's show, and then maybe some other stuff. And so help us out. Subscribe or whatever you do. Follow. I don't know what the terminology is, but you know what the deal. It's TikTok. Yeah. Go do it, and then we'll meet you back here for a brand new Star Wars Minute.
Star Wars Minute!